Hello, Garland Nixon here with the one and only Margaret Kimberly, and we got a lot of important stuff to talk about. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here with Margaret Kimberly. Margaret is the editor and senior columnist at blackagendareport.com. And I got an article here. Let's see. Where's her book? It's not on here. Margaret's book is, what's the name of your book again?
Prejudential, Black America and the Presidents, which I don't have at hand either. So yeah, it's worse. But anyway.
Yeah, I've got it at my, I've got bookshelves all over the place here. So, all right, I'll have to pull something out over here and replace that. It won't be Paul Robeson, but it'll be something I'll pull aside. Maybe The Rotten Heart of Europe. Nobody knows what that is. So I'll have to replace your book. Anyway, Margaret, let us continue. You got an interesting article, and it is, and I'll let everybody take a look at it. Trump exposes the elite classes. While Trump dedicates himself to making every conservative fancy come true, millions wonder who will save them from the onslaught of the right-wing fever dream. The answer is, I love this, no one but ourselves. Oh, but the hands off, NATO was out last week telling us that, we've got to, continue to support Liz Cheney and their ilk, Margaret. That's not going to save us from the ruling elite.
Well, if you have Nancy Pelosi at your protest, you don't have much of a protest. Amy Klobuchar, Cory Booker. I mean, we can talk about his fake PR 25-hour PR stunt. Those people are not going to help. Those people are responsible for so many of the problems we have. They are responsible for Trump being president again. And so this hands off, I thought it was interesting. I saw the graphic for hands off, and it was hands off Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, hands off NATO, hands off NATO. So this was a Democratic Party operation. And there were, it drew thousands of people all over the country who do want something different. Most of them are not Democratic Party operatives, but that's who was in charge of these demonstrations. And that's very unfortunate because people are desperate. They're elected Democratic voters, their elected officials are not helping them. Hakeem Jeffries famously said, I don't know if I have any leverage. They control everything. It's their government. So you have Chuck Schumer going along with, Cory Booker. If he really wanted to show his opposition to Trump, he could have actually had a real filibuster, that is to say, delayed a vote on actual legislation, a continuing resolution on the budget. He could have done that. But these people are not, they're not they are the status quo and they are responsible. And so if there's any demonstration the Democrats are responsible for, then of course you're going to have Nancy Pelosi there saying, we got to protect Social Security. Although I remember when Obama was president and he offered the Republicans to cut the budget, and Obama said everything's on the table. So she didn't even mean what she was saying. And as my article was, I was inspired to write it because of Columbia University's capitulation to Trump, the law firm Paul Weiss and others capitulating to Trump, agreeing in exchange for keeping their access to government, agreeing to provide pro bono legal help for conservative causes, that they would provide legal help for anyone claiming to suffer from anti-Semitism, meaning shutting people up about Israel. Let's be clear about this new meaning. At Columbia University going along with saying they were going to ban masks and the president was going to expel students, all of which they could have fought. Their legal standing, the Trump administration's legal standing was not very good, but they went along. They go along to get along. And if anybody thought that these pointy-headed intellectuals at schools like Columbia or these well-paid law firms, the best and the brightest and the best law schools, blah, 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 if you thought they were going to stand up for you, now you know differently.
Well, I think the good thing that happens in an instance like this is Trump exposes them for who they are. You know, they pretend like they're on our side. And it's always something like, well, we stand up. They're always say we stand up for LGBTQ rights or women's rights or minority rights, or they come up with some acronym like BIPOC. I remember like BIPOC. What the hell is BIPOC? That sounds like some dumb damn liberal will come. Black or indigenous people of color. Oh, yeah. As you're, screwing them over, throwing them out of the country, beating the hell out of them because they're protesting Zionism or something like that. And they always put up this veneer of morality. And
Yep.
one of the things I've been saying, and I think it's down the line, if you could comment on this. This veneer of morality, we're standing up for this group or that group, or they make up a new group. They literally have to make up a new group now that people am I in that group? Am I not in that group? Does that group really exist? What the hell is this group, right? But as that happens, I keep saying this, that game is over because Gaza has completely exposed them as morally discredited. And so these games that they're playing, only, the diehard liberal Democrats that no matter what are going to stand with Kamala and Liz Cheney. Sure, you're going to get them. But a lot of other people are like, yeah, when I look at what you're doing in Gaza and I look at that stuff, there's no more talk about you're standing up for anybody anymore. You're exposed. What do you think, Margaret?
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. And I think Gaza is central to political discourse now. The fact that the Democratic Party, it was bipartisan, that the political class went along with, aided and abetted a genocide. That's ongoing. So it starts with Biden and Trump continues it. Trump he's still, Netanyahu I don't know if he's still in Washington, met with Trump yesterday. Trump is still talking about forcing 2 million people to leave Gaza. And they tried to send them to Jordan and Egypt, but Jordan and Egypt said no. So now they're just killing people. They've ramped up their killing spree to try to force people to leave, to try to force these countries to take them in. Why should they leave their homes? And Jordan and Egypt, both U.S. client states, have a problem. If they suddenly take in 1 million people who will radicalize their populations, there are these Arab governments who covertly or openly do business with Israel, but that's not what their people want. So they have a problem if Gaza Palestinians come into their country, and that's why so far they've been saying no. But all of this is because of collusion. That was a big word a few years ago. In the political class between Democrats and Republicans, which said we have to do anything Israel wants, and if Israel wants to commit war crimes in Gaza, fine, we're going to help them do it. Keeping aid out. And that's why Netanyahu has an ICC arrest warrant, specifically for withholding humanitarian aid from Gaza. That's why he had to take the long way around on his trip, because there's certain countries who said, we're members of the ICC, and if you fly over our territory, we are obligated to arrest you. But that's something that's not discussed very often. It's kind of been disappeared by the corporate media. So they're all responsible. They're all, and Cory Booker, didn't he vote for continuing aid to military aid to Israel? Only 15 senators voted no, just 15. And 85 said, yes, let's continue the genocide. So that's where we are now. And that's a sorry state of affairs of, the elite classes, these, Cory Booker and the like, went to Ivy League schools and blah, 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 and they're a senator and whatever. but they keep going along.
Well, I'll mention this, even this, as you start digging into this hands-off movement, the people that ran it, that were behind it, Leah Greenberg and Ezra Levin, they were the two that were actually behind it. Leah Greenberg, they run this organization called Indivisible, right? I don't know how much you've looked into it. So the people who set this whole thing completely behind it were a company called organization called Indivisible, who are run by two people, Leah Greenberg, Ezra Levin. Leah Greenberg is a former State Department advisor. Ezra Levin worked for he worked directly for the Obama administration. He worked as he worked in these NGOs. One of them, the main NGO that he worked for, started for a few years, was funded by BlackRock, Goldman Sachs, blah, blah, blah. So the people that set this up, you know what I mean? They are like the machine of all machine operatives. They are operatives. So when you look at that and you're like, okay, this whole thing was set up by operatives, I've come to the conclusion, not that either party's worth a crap. The Republican Party, we know what the Republican Party is, always has been. But to me, the Democratic Party isn't even really a party anymore. It's like an operation that is like run by the BlackRocks and stuff, the Goldman Sachs of the world, the intelligence communities of the world. You know what I mean? It's like, and it's one thing if they're hiding it. It is getting blatantly obvious that this is a political expression of the BlackRocks and the CIA, everything. What do? All these people are getting fired at the Department of Agriculture and the Department of, and I'm like, hey, that's terrible. You're firing regular old people, workers. And you're going to take that money, and Trump just said it, and increase the Pentagon budget. We're going to fire working class people so we can have more money for war. But yet, the only thing the Democrats are out there really angry is the thing that really got them in the street was when they were cutting USAID money. That's what really riled them up.
Well, it's my whole life I was told that Social Security was the third rail of politics. You can't touch it. But Trump and Musk were touching that, or there were fears they would touch that, things that were considered sacrosanct. We'll cut other things, but we're not going to touch these safety net programs. So people are rightly concerned, people who may not be politically active otherwise. And I'm as a person who receives Social Security, and I'm not going to say you shouldn't be concerned about that. But you see how far we have fallen, that everything is on the table except defense. Trump said yesterday he's going to request $1 trillion defense budget. Now it's already more than 800 million. And when he was president the first time, Nancy Pelosi would go along with all his requests to raise the defense budget. Democrats go along. There's a handful of people who will vote no, but almost all of them will say yes. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say you're concerned about federal workers being fired and then say, yes, we should have $1 trillion defense budget. And frankly, I say there are some who are saying we should call it the War Department. And I say, go right ahead. You're being honest, because that's the purpose of it. But so we have a lot of phoniness from these people who, as you point out, are Democratic Party operatives who any movement, and I say in air quotes, any movement that people like that are in charge of has no legitimacy. Because the goal of their alleged movement is to put Democrats back in power. It's not to help people. It's not to change anything. If you're concerned about military spending, if you're concerned about continuing a genocide with Israel, then neither of the duopoly parties is for you. But once again, we're told that our choices are very narrow. You're either a MAGA Republican or you have to cling to the discredited Democrats. And I'm glad you mentioned BlackRock and other institutions. That's the Democrat. Those are the oligarchs of the Democratic Party. Bernie Sanders is running around, he and AOC, claiming they want to stop oligarchy in the country. Well, they're Democratic Party oligarchs. And if they're in charge of your quote unquote movement, then you don't really have a movement.
Absolutely. To me, I think what happened is the machine, the intelligence operations, the BlackRocks of the world looked at it and they said, people are pissed and upset, and we might be able to leverage that. The game. I think we can leverage that. You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of the pink hat protest. Remember that? The first time Trump got elected and they got crocheted these pink hats and they went out and Debbie Wasserman Schultz was speaking they called it the women's protest, right? And I remember watching it thinking, all right, let's see what they're asking for. I never found anything they were asking for. Martin Luther King, people don't know, he went out there and he said, we want jobs and an increased minimum wage. Remember, it was a $2 minimum wage. Martin Luther King had a protest. He said, we want this. You could like it, not like it. It was clear. You see protests, anti-war in the 1960s and 70s. Stop the Vietnam War protest. Stop this, anti-war. Do this, don't do this. Here's a protest. We hate Trump. Okay, what's your protest? We hate Trump.
There's no, I mean, to your point, a protest is supposed to have a demand. So what's your demand? What's your demand? Is it, hands off? Okay, you could say
they did have one, hands off NATO. They did have one.
Yeah, I know. It could be hands off the safety net or hands off the government. I mean, it has to be something, but you need a clear demand. Otherwise, it's just virtue signaling. And I think a lot of people, they mean well, they're concerned about things they should be concerned about. But if we cede the ground to these Democratic operatives, then you have nothing. Because if you turn your back, and the so-called weakness of the Democrats, it's just that Trump has cut them out. Because ordinarily the minority party will have a role to play. They'll get a little something. They wheel and deal and they talk. Trump's cut them out. He's ruling, and I think ruling is the correct word. He's, with these executive orders of dubious legality. It's not even a lot of legislation from Congress, even though the Republicans are the majority in the House and the Senate. So they've been cut out, and Trump's not playing the game in the usual way. So that's why they're so flummoxed, because they just, when did they last really oppose anything? As I just said, it was Obama. Some people called it the Cat Food Commission, and he made this this offer of a grand bargain to Republicans, and they said no, and it's a good thing. Actually, they helped Mitch McConnell and company helped us out. They just didn't want Obama to have a victory, which actually was good for us because, as Nancy Pelosi said then, everything's on the table. So yeah, this is where we are now. That some of their pet projects are disappearing, but it's very disturbing to people to have government programs which had been sacrosanct being touched. Even programs that help Trump voters, those agriculture programs that help rural communities. So people are upset about that, and maybe that will be his undoing. But we have to keep in mind that the Democrats also have an oligarchy. Stop the oligarchy or fight the oligarchy, whatever it is Bernie and AOC are saying. They don't talk about the fact that Democrats have an oligarchy as well.
Well, what's interesting is this: they never used the word. The only time they used the word oligarchy was Russian oligarchs, right?
Yes.
Okay, Russian oligarchs got a few $1 billion. Our oligarchs got like hundreds of billions. A Russian oligarch has like 3.7. Look at Oleg Deripaski; he's worth $5 billion or something. Really, how much is Musk worth? How much is Gates worth? And they're like, oh, our oligarchs are worth 100 times, literally 100 times what the so-called oligarchs in Russia are worth. But they've got oligarchs. We've just got job creators, right?
We got people, job creators. Hardworking rich people pull themselves up by their bootstraps or whatever lie is being promoted at the moment. But yes, we live in an oligarchy, and it's bipartisan. That's why Bernie and AOC are such a joke. It's the same thing, sheepdogging leftish Democrats back into the party fold by pointing at Trump. Look at Trump and see, you should, making people feel guilty if they didn't vote for Kamala Harris, or, the usual scam, because that's what it is, a scam.
Well, one of the things I think that's happened here is the so-called black leaders have really been exposed. You want to talk about a mousy looking guy. Have you seen Hakeem Jeffries lately? Every time I see him talking, it's like his eyes are at the ground. Oh, what's going on? Blah, blah, blah. Well, he's like mumbling. You can't hear what he says. I guess maybe we could do something to stop Trump. And I'm like, he's been thoroughly exposed as feckless, as nothing but, you know what he was doing? Here's what we've seen of black leaders. They sit around and wait their turn. They sit around and wait for their masters, like Hakeem Jeffries. Yeah. Hakeem Jeffries was like, okay, if I sit around and keep my mouth shut, I get on a plane and I go to Taiwan with, remember that? And he flies to Taiwan with Nancy Pelosi and they get off the plane. She turns to the right, he turns to the right. She turns to the left, he turns to the left. You know what I mean? It was like one of those old, puppet shows from the Marx Brothers, where they pretended to be on opposite sides of the mirrors, going like that, right? And so, for the black so-called the misleadership class, their job was herd black people into the party, sheepdog them in, and then sit around and wait, because sooner or later somebody would say to Hakeem Jeffries, "You, sir, are going to be the next Speaker of the House." But even when you get to be Speaker of the House, they'll call you and say, push this, don't push that, oppose this, oppose that. You'll never really get any power. Your job will be to stand there, show a black face, try to sheepdog more black people, and just use a black hand to do the dirty work of BlackRock and the military industrial complex instead of a white hand.
Oh, absolutely. It's I saw a video of him last week, and it was funny to me. He was supposed to be speaking against Trump, but first of all, he was wearing dark glasses, and I always say the eyes are the window to the soul. So to your point, I was like, doesn't look that sunny. Why is he in dark glasses and he's waving his hands around like a bad actor, which is what he is. But yeah, it's it doesn't do us. I mean, we saw it with Obama. What good does it do to have a black face in a high place if they're promoting the same policies that fail us, that target us, that are used to make the rich richer, that are used to make war around the world, that don't help the people? Okay, so you have a black person doing it instead. You have a younger black person doing it instead of old Nancy Pelosi. So what? It's the same thing. But to your point, it's the so-called leadership. Let's put leadership in quotes. Doesn't mean very much, because it's still the leadership of a discredited party, of an oligarchic party, of a party run by rich people, a party run by the military industrial complex. So what good does it do to have a black person in charge of the same thing?
Well, the sad thing is, and I'm sure you see this, because I have friends and relatives who are diehard Democrats. And here's what I see. They are literally told what to be mad at, what to be angry at, in unison. And I had a bunch of them. So I knew that MSNBC had been running something particularly, because this is what I started hearing in the chattering crowd. Yeah, have you seen the latest? Trump fired this black general who was in charge of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And I'm like, of all of the things for you to be upset at, some warmongering imperialist monster whose job is to literally oppress black people in Africa, to bomb and drone black people and Muslims and brown people around the world, Asian people, whoever he can, anybody he can bomb. His job is to commit evil deeds. And you're told by your masters, you should be mad, because they're not going to allow a black person to be the puppet for U.S. imperialism worldwide anymore. And I'm like, well, you know what I mean? Your mind, I'll put it like this. The people who say, hey, they're going to disarm us. They're going to disarm us and take our guns. No, they've already mentally disarmed you. They can give you a tank. You don't know where to point it. There ain't going to be no revolution, as Fahid Bolson says. You don't know where to point the weapon if you got it. You'll probably point it at right now they're pointing it at their own feet. That's what I'm saying, Margaret.
Well, you're absolutely right. Brown I can't even remember the man's name.
We'll call him Tom. Whatever his last name is.
Former chairman of the Joint Chiefs, who Trump appointed as head of, was it the Air Force or the Army when he was his first term as president? but he wanted Hedgeseth, who's, this dopey guy who's just a
lunatic. He's a total lunatic.
Very, very much so. However, they're all lunatics.
Yes.
People said, oh, Lloyd Austin, who was Biden's defense secretary, he was so much more qualified than Hedgeseth. And I said to myself, you shouldn't care who runs the Pentagon. The Pentagon does the same thing, no matter who's in office. I don't care if the person is quote unquote qualified or not qualified. They are in charge of killing people all over the world. So if Hedgeseth, is barely educated or, a MAGA nutcase, it's really not worse than Lloyd Austin. Lloyd Austin was helping Israel commit genocide. Lloyd Austin was committed to helping these Nazis in Ukraine. So how is Hedgeseth any worse? And and it's funny what you said about people who are indoctrinated by the Democrats. Everybody acts like, MAGA Republicans, they're the only people who are indoctrinated. And it's like, no, they aren't. They're not the only ones who are indoctrinated. So you have people who should know better, defending things they should not defend.
Absolutely. It's interesting. The crowd, I do that show on Pacifica every Friday, and I'm telling you, every week someone calls in, some diehard Democrat, and says, I don't think Trump won. He stole it. And I'm like, so let me get this straight. The polls all said that he was going to win.
Mm-hmm.
The exit polls all said that he was going to win. So they asked the people, did you vote for Trump? They said yes. So the polling said he was going to win. The exit polling said he was going to win. And he won in a blowout. And you still think he stole it. After, might I add, the first 4 years of saying the government is totally illegitimate because the Russians stole it for Trump. The next 4 years of saying, how dare Trump say that the election was illiterate? He's an election denier. And might I add, Trump, at least whether you agree with it or not, he won in a razor close election. So he had more argument than you had. Whether you agree with it or not, it was a close election. I don't trust any of them, for starters. So after calling this guy an election denier in a close race, he wins in a blowout that everybody knew a bag of Fritos could beat Kamala Harris. And what do the Democrats do in their deluded state? He stole it. It's a deluded party. They are.
I have, Garland, I've heard that from so many people. I think, people saying Elon Musk did something with the vote totals. And I said, well, people said, have you written about that at Black Agenda Report? I'm like, no, that's not an article. If someone a whistleblower came forward or somebody said, I have evidence, that would be one thing. But people, just because they don't like Trump, saying, I think they stole it. I mean, so now everybody's an election denier. I mean, I do want to say this about our elections. They're all stolen to a degree. There are people who are eligible who are kept from voting. There are people who are kept ineligible, like people who've committed felonies, no matter how long ago. There are certain states where you can never vote.
Yep.
If you were ever convicted of a felony. The ID requirements, the provisional ballots that are thrown out. All elections should be in disrepute in this country. Democrats have to be ahead by a lot to keep from keep Republicans from cheating. And that's something we should always say. You have to have a big Democratic turnout. Because all of these, the voter ID and everything, it's to keep Black people from voting. It's to keep brown people from voting. That's why they do. And it does keep some people from voting. And provisional ballots are almost always thrown out. It's thousands of votes. So if you have a close race in a certain state, it's stolen. So if you're going to talk about those things, I think that's fine. But to be a sore loser, basically, and just say, I think they stole it, because you can't accept the fact that the Democrats messed up so badly and Trump is back in the White House. That's just ridiculous.
Well, and the other part of it is this, because I was talking with someone about it and they're like, yeah, I think they stole it. And I said, well, wait a minute. At what level? I said, let me tell you why. Joe Biden, 2016, the evidence is clear that they stole it from Bernie. They were sued, and their answer was, well, this is not really a party, it's a corporation, and we can just throw anybody we want into there. Their argument was, it doesn't matter if we stole it or not.
Yes.
Because we can steal it legally. That was their argument. Okay. Then, so they stole it in 2016 in the primaries. The Democrats in 2020, what happened? Bernie was about to make a killing on Super Tuesday. Obama steps in, musters the whole party together, marshals all the dynamics, controls the dynamics of the party, gets the right people out, keeps Elizabeth Warren in because she's going to take some Bernie votes. They do everything. So the party steals it again. They use the machinations of the power elite to make sure that they had Joe Biden. So they clearly have no issues with stealing an election. They steal an election, put this zombie Biden up, or this brain dead lunatic, what's her name, Liz Cheney loving Zionist up in blackface. They might as well ran Pierre Trudeau. And then they're like, oh, they stole it from us after we stole it. You stole it, and then that's like me stealing money from you. Me stealing your you have a valuable necklace, and I steal your necklace. Then another criminal comes along and steals it from me, and now I'm upset because it was a stolen necklace in the first place.
Yes, absolutely. It's the corruption of the Democratic Party. And there's something else I want to talk about. You're absolutely right. They came in, they decided to go with Biden. They got everybody to drop out. They cheated Bernie in the Iowa caucuses. Suddenly there was something wrong with the ballots and the voting. I'm like, oh, you're stealing it. And so you're absolutely right about that. Then they pushed people out to make sure it was Biden. Then when anybody with common sense could tell that Biden was in decline, they told us he just had a stutter. And this is something that hurt Kamala Harris.
He just developed a stutter. He didn't have
Yes, I was like, I've been looking at Joe Biden for decades. I don't remember him having a stutter. Suddenly it was just a stutter. And then you see him decline and decline and decline. And they tell us, nope, don't believe your lying eyes. He's perfectly healthy. Then at the 11th hour, they shove him out. Biden, of course, being Biden, screws it up for everybody else by endorsing Kamala Harris because they're Nancy Pelosi and Obama and others wanted an open convention. He screwed them by endorsing Kamala Harris. So it was stolen all along. But people aren't stupid. You can't tell people for 4 years Biden's perfectly healthy when people can see with their own eyes that he isn't. And then at the end, he face plants at the debate with Trump. And then suddenly he's got to go. I'm like, well, wait a minute. I thought he was okay. So what's the problem here? So all this talk of stealing, there's a lot of stealing to your point. But it's just sad to me for people.
We got Margaret. She's
not to want to face the fact again that millions of people look at Trump and say, yes, I want him to be the president. He's won every time Trump runs, he gets more votes every single time. So there are millions of people who like Trump, and you don't have to agree with them, but don't be in denial about it. And of all the people, word salad, deer caught in the headlights. Of course she couldn't, they tried to shoehorn her in at the last minute. Well, of course she lost. So it's perfectly logical to me that Trump got more votes. He got more electoral votes and popular votes. So he's the president. End of story.
Exactly. I'll put it like this. To me, as far as they have no argument, Trump has more argument than them that it was stolen. And I'll tell you why. I mean, not that as I said, to me, they're all a bunch of imperialist monsters and they're going to do the same policies with, different people. But the Hunter Biden laptop, they had that laptop. The FBI had it for a year. They knew it was Hunter Biden's laptop and they knew it was true. And a month before the election, not even that, the FBI comes out and says, if anybody tells you that this Hunter Biden laptop, blah, 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 that it is Russian, they called it a pump and dump operation or whatever, right?
Disinformation, Russian disinformation.
Then they put together a 51 intelligence agents letter to specifically, there was an email sent by John Brennan that specifically said, and anybody can go on and find it. We're doing this, and I'm paraphrasing a little, but the reason we're doing this is because Thursday, Joe Biden has a debate and he needs something. He can use this to push back against Trump. So Trump can make an argument that the FBI and the Biden administration did do election interference. I'm not saying I take anybody's side, but he's got an argument. If you got an argument, which I don't know what it is, because you lost, you got blown out. I mean, it's like losing a football game by 40 points and then saying the ref stole it from you. You know, no, the refs couldn't steal it. They didn't take 5 touchdowns from you. You lost the game. But let's get to the Bernie AOC article that you wrote. What do we need to know about Bernie AOC's sheepdogging operation? Operation Sheepdog, we'll call it.
That's all it is. That I also think it's like an audition for AOC, perhaps to run in 2028. I think that's also part of it. But this, this fight the oligarchy, Bernie, and Bernie does this all the time when he talks big when Republicans are in, but when Democrats are in, he's silent. So he doesn't talk about the oligarchy when Democratic oligarchs put Biden in. And he defended Biden no matter, and AOC too. Remember, she said he exceeded, what was it? He exceeded expectations or something along those lines.
Yes.
When they got, people with this progressive reputation and they use them, they're very valuable to the Democrats to try to keep their, leftish constituents in line. So you get AOC to say, he exceeded expectations. And yes, he really is the most progressive president since FDR. And yes, he's going to cut child poverty in half. All that BS that they were telling us to try to keep us quiet. That was the role that she played and that Bernie played. So they play along with this crooked game and give legitimacy to these neoliberals like Biden. I recall at the convention, AOC saying Kamala Harris is working tirelessly on a ceasefire in Gaza. No, she wasn't. She was no part of it, and nobody was working on a ceasefire. But that's the role they play to try to trick people. So they're up. It's the old game being played again, and Democrats in desperations follow them around, and they do have big crowds. Okay, but it's the same stuff. It's the same discredited sheepdogging. And our late colleague at Black Agenda Report, Bruce Dixon, is credited with creating that sheepdog moniker. But that's all it is. It's nobody should pay attention to this. And nobody needs to go and stand outside listening to Bernie and AOC and think anything is going to change, because they don't speak up. They, did Bernie vote for Trump's appointees? How many of the people who were confirmed, did Bernie vote for him? Did Bernie vote for Marco Rubio? I'm not sure.
Oh, I think probably so. I think it was unanimous.
So
unanimous. So
then we have, it's a dog and pony show, giving us the illusion of difference where there is none. So, don't pay any attention to Bernie and to AOC. I wanted to say something else about Hunter Biden's laptop. I don't think it was something that was going to hurt Biden, but the optics of it, Twitter, a different owner of Twitter at the time, they agreed not to link to any stories about Hunter Biden's laptop. Why? Because there was an email from a Ukrainian who said, "Thank you for introducing me to your father after all this time of saying that Hunter Biden being on the board of this Ukrainian oil company he was qualified for the job, and any questions about conflicts of interest. So that was all it was. But they panicked and wanted to discredit the entire story, which I don't think was going to hurt Biden that much. I really don't think it would have, but they thought it would have. So they colluded with social media and others in corporate media to try to kill this story, to round up their friends to say, we could tell this is Russian disinformation. So I think it's very important that we remember that kind of corruption that the Democrats display when it's or they think it's advantageous to them.
Well, you know what kills me is to go real quick back to this. Hands off. Where'd that come from? You and I know it came from hands off Venezuela. It came from hands off Cuba. It was the people who were concerned about U.S. imperial, the Monroe Doctrine, and going after hands off Nicaragua. It started, I think, hands off Venezuela was where it actually started.
That's my memory too. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So it was hands off. It was an anti-Monroe Doctrine, right? But this now hands off. There was no Cuba there. There was no Venezuela. They've taken the hands off because they knew, wow, that sounds good. That's powerful. That works, right? But these are the people that are pro going after Venezuela and stealing their oil and, doing in Cuba and Nicaragua and all the countries that are pushing back against U.S. imperialism. So they just steal the term and turn it inside out, literally.
Yeah, and that's indoctrination. I mean, what is that but brainwashing? It's war propaganda. But it's the quote unquote right people. It's Democrats saying it, so everybody forgets. But I remember when Trump in his first term was first sanctioning and attacking Venezuela in a variety of ways, and this term "hands off Venezuela" was coined. But the Democratic establishment wasn't with it. I remember somebody asking AOC, what did she think about Venezuela and Trump administration policy? And she said, I have to check with the leadership. I have to find out from the lead. I mean, she actually said that.
Yes.
She wasn't standing up for Venezuela. Bernie was calling Hugo Chavez a dead communist dictator. Bernie has repeated that President Maduro is cheated in elections when there's no evidence that he has. So the real hands off, both of them had their hands off. They, went along with the foreign policy orthodoxy that is bipartisan. So then they want to steal hands off Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and NATO, hands off NATO. Trump does also, can we stop saying Trump doesn't like NATO? Trump just wants the Europeans to spend more money on defense. That's what he wants. And they do it. They always do it. So that's as far as it goes. And if you're on the left, you should not like NATO, and you shouldn't care, actually, if the U.S. withdrew from NATO, which is never going to happen, because these are all very useful vassal states for the U.S. But no, not hands off NATO. But I knew they were phony. But then when I saw that hands off NATO, I was like, yeah, okay.
Well, one thing we know, what's interesting is the Democrats are like, they're opposing Trump, right? So what have they opposed really most vehemently? They have opposed Trump ending the Ukraine conflict. That's the thing that really pisses him off. The fact that he might get out of NATO or threaten NATO, which he's not, but still, that's what really pisses him off. But a potential cataclysmic, catastrophic attack on Iran, Democrats are not saying, no, don't do that. Oh, well, Iran, we got nothing to say about that. We'll support it, right? The Gaza genocide, mum's the word. Trump, oh, yeah, you think these wars are bad. I'll go after China and really screw everything up. Where's the Democrats? That's good work. What about Yemen? Trump's going to bomb Yemen, Mr. the Peacemaker. Hey, Democrats, I'm going to bomb Yemen. Hey, you need some extra bombs? So the only thing they oppose Donald Trump is from the right. They oppose Donald Trump when he's not enough of a warmonger.
Absolutely. They don't mention, this whole, actually, Ukraine's not working out the way I think Trump wanted it to. He wants out of Ukraine because he wants to target China. So he doesn't want to spend time and money on Russia when he wants to target China. Now, this is problematic for a lot of reasons. Obviously, to try to start a war or any kind of attack on China is very dangerous. I don't think he can separate Russia from China like he thought. Putin's no fool, and they want to. That's one of the reasons Netanyahu was there, to talk about attacking Iran and killing people in Iran. And that is not on the liberals. Fighting that is not on the liberals' agenda. So you are absolutely right. These people who attack Trump from the right, they want the Ukraine. Do you know? I'm you know, but I want people to understand that the money for Ukraine doesn't just go to the military-industrial complex. Public money is keeping Ukraine's government afloat. Everything the Ukrainian government does is paid for by the U.S. It may as well be the 51st state. You know, everything from schools to street cleaning to hospitals in Ukraine is paid for by U.S. taxpayers. It is like
heck, the states don't get that. Ukraine and Israel. I said it's better than the 51st state.
Well,
the states don't get that. No, they're not talking about.
No, we don't have free health care.
Yeah,
we don't have universal health care.
How about Israel? Same with Israel. Israel has free college and free health care. Isn't it interesting that the puppet war states of the U.S. Gets fed better, gets better health care, gets all of the things that the people here want? But it's like, well, I'm sorry, who's going to pay for that? We can't afford it. Why? Because we're providing it for Israel and Ukraine.
Yeah. And that's not a problem for them. And Trump saying he wants $1 billion military budget is not a problem.
Trillion. It's up to $1 trillion now.
Which
means it was 867 billion last year, theoretically, because it's really about 1.4 trillion. But let's just say $867 billion, right? That's $133 billion increase. So that's what, somewhere around 15, 18, 20%, 18, 20% increase. Donald Trump said, I'm going to decrease the military budget. I want to look into decreasing it by 8%, right? And then I read the other day, well, in return for blah, 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 Donald Trump has agreed, as if somebody had to twist his arm, has agreed to increase it by, $133 billion. You know, I said this a few weeks ago, and they're like, yeah, Trump is trimming the fat off the federal government. I'm like, A, no, he's not. But B, I don't care how much money they, quote, save by firing a bunch of people at the Department of Agriculture. They will spend more than that in their increase alone. And trust me, if they're increasing that, they're increasing military intelligence budget, they're increasing the CIA's budget, they're increasing the FBI's budget, all of the people they use to investigate students who are protesting against Zionism and things of that, and people who are like online saying, hey, I think we're getting screwed. All the money that they use for that will get increased along. The whole machine goes up together of oppression, internal and external. Margaret.
Oh, absolutely. And Trump, of course, this is so insidious. You know, when he lies about saying, I can do it in a day, I can end the war in Ukraine, which everybody knew he couldn't. I want peace here. I want peace there. I want to decrease them. It's a lie. But they say this because they know that's what people want. They know people want a lower defense budget. They know people want less military spending. They know that people don't want the U.S. involved in forever wars all over the world. They know that, and they campaign on what they know people want, but they're lying all the time. That is not what people don't want. $1 trillion military budget. I know now it's half of all public spending is for the military budget. So it's going to be even more, I guess. So, you know, once again, we see this. You said they're not political parties. They're just operations. It's money laundering. That's what it is.
Didn't they, to the Trump people and Musk, we've got a $37 trillion deficit. America's going to be bankrupt. We've got to do something about that. We've got to stop that. We got to fire employees. We got to cut back. We got to cut this back. We got to do this. Okay, what about where the money is all spent in the military? Well, we better not touch that. You know, it's like this. A person who is an alcoholic and we've all known them in our lives, whether they were friends or family members or people we've grown up with, a person who has a substance abuse problem. And next thing you know, their wife is gone, their kids won't speak to them, they lost their job, they lost their license, everything's screwed up. And they're willing to do anything to address the problem except stop drinking. You know what I mean? I'll do anything I can. How about stop drinking? I don't have a drinking problem. I socialize every now and then, but doesn't everybody? And that's what it is. Warmongering is destroying the United States, and the government, they're willing to do anything to address it, except stop the warmongering. Well, that has to be more.
I think the Defense Department budget is, I think they've failed every audit. Isn't it true that they've failed every audit?
Yeah.
And, so if you wanted government efficiency, it seems to me you would start there. I mean, that's not true of any other government agency. But,
wasn't there an article that said like $21 trillion or something they couldn't account for over the last X amount of years?
Yes,
remember that article?
I can't remember
the unthinkable number.
Yes, it was a huge number that's not accounted for, because the goal of the money laundering is for the military industrial complex. The Raytheons, the McDonnell Douglases, the Boeings, the Grummans, the et cetera, et cetera.
The SpaceXs.
SpaceX, yes.
SpaceXs, Google.
You mean Musk has not cut the budget for his company?
Isn't that yeah, he's got billions. Like I think last year was 5.9 billion or something. So this guy, there's waste, fraud, and abuse that has to be cut. All the poor bastard that fixes the copy machines at the Department of Agriculture, you got to lay him off. Can't have the guy that sweeps the floor, cuts the grass, lay them all off. But there seems to be no waste, fraud, and abuse in SpaceX or Tesla or any of the contracts that he has. They're all pristine and perfectly run, but everybody else has to be cut. Isn't that convenient, Margaret?
Yes, it's interesting, isn't it? But Musk is just the most obvious. He's of the oligarchs, of the billionaires who run the world and have most of the wealth in the world. He's just one who's more upfront. There are Musks in the Democratic Party who tell presidents what they can and cannot do. That's why Democrats now are voting to increase the minimum wage, and they wouldn't do it when Biden was in. So it's all part of the scam. The oligarchs won't let them do it. They've told them, you are not going to help people. This COVID thing is over. That's the end of any improvements in the safety net. You are not to do it. And so they did not.
And last thing I'll just briefly touch base on, I want to get your thoughts. The tariffs. Oh my God, Trump's doing the tariffs. They're going to hurt us. I believe two things. Number one, the ruling elite, their big problem is China. Why? Because China has found a way to make things work far better than them. And China is rising because they have found an economic formula and obviously a social formula, because over 90% of the people in China approve of their government. So that whatever the case, they found a formula that is successful. And there's nothing the ruling elite hates worse than a rising power that they can't dominate. And number two, an alternative system that works so that somebody can point to neoliberalism, or the people here that are victims of neoliberalism can say, hey, how come they can own their own homes and buy cars, and they can do things that we can't? We want some of that. I think the tariffs, because now what happened? These tariffs on China said, we're going to give you 34% back. Trump, I'll do 50%. Well, I think China's prepared. For China has made up their mind a long time ago, in the same way that Russia was preparing for 2022 since 2008. China has been preparing for years, and China's like, I don't care if they hit us with 5 million% tariffs. We're going to do it, and they're going to collapse of their own. You know what I mean? Our economy's going to, China's going to sit there and say, well, but I think the ruling elite, they're not making a lot of noise, even though they're losing a fortune, but they ain't making a lot of noise. Why? Because they're on board, because they know to a big extent this is an attack on China, and the ruling elite has decided we got to put the crosshairs. We got to stop China because they're exposing us as greedy, oligarchs. Anyway, your thoughts on the tariffs?
Good. China is, by some measures, the economy of China is bigger than that of the U.S. But how did all this happen? In addition to changes that the Communist Party of China has made over the years. They were handed finance capital, defeated manufacturing capital, and said, you can make stuff in China. We don't need to have stuff made here. And so the Chinese took it and ran with it. Excuse me. And now China is a direct competitor of the US for influence around the world, a competitor economically, and they cannot stand it. So they think they're going to destroy China's economy. They're going to end up hurting the US more, actually. And then we'll find out how much stomach these oligarchs have for harming the economy here. So we'll see how they ultimately respond. But right now, we, the people of this country, are going to pay the price. Tariffs are a tax. It's a tax. Everything is going to cost more. Even American cars will cost more. They get parts from China. They get parts from other parts of the world. Everything people need is going to cost more.
Yeah.
But we'll see. We'll see if the oligarchs, how far they are willing to go to try to fight China. And China is underestimated over and over and over again. And why they think that Xi Jinping is just going to, get the vapors and faint and not fight back is really astounding.
Yeah, there's going to be a severe price to pay. But Margaret, thank you very much. Certainly appreciate you taking time out of your busy week to spend time with us. BlackAgendaReport.com is the website. And you guys don't you have like a Black Agenda Radio? You have some other things that you're doing now besides just a website with articles. Not saying just, that's actually an outstanding website. But you guys got some other stuff you do now, right?
We do. On Wednesdays, BlackAgendaReport.com. As you said, we have our articles. And we have Black Agenda Radio on Fridays, also on blackagendareport.com.
Okay, thank you very much. Who's your latest guest on the Black Agenda Radio?
We're going to have Helia Dutagi, Yale professor, who one of the victims of this Zionist pressure to get people fired and harassed. So she is a guest, and we're also going to talk about local politics here in New York and the need for independent politics away from Democratic primaries. So
now you're talking my language. We do need to get away from that. When people ask me what's the answer, I say my opinion is we need to get away from the one party's masquerading as two. All right, Margaret. Thanks, everybody. Don't forget blackagendareport.com. That's where you can find Margaret. You can find me if you look everything scrolling across the bottom. Telegram, Substack. Rumble, of course, in case they, throw me off of YouTube, whatever the case may be. And if you can donate, you see all the stuff, if you can, across the bottom. Even if you can, it doesn't matter. The important thing is that the people in the chat are an integral part of modern day alternative media. Why? Because you're the ones that can share it. Right now, there's 335 people. That means 335 shares, whether it's on X or Instagram or Telegram. So the people in the chat, the great thing about alternative media is that the people who are in the chat, the people who are watching, are an integral part of building it. We don't have advertisements and things like that. But when you see, I saw Judge Napolitano, I forgot who he had, a really good guest the other day. I forgot who it was, but whatever it was, there was like 500 and some thousand views. And I think they were talking about Gaza or whatever the case may be. NBC News, MSN, they could only dream of getting those kind of views on some of their stuff. So the people in alternative media make a difference. Share this everywhere you can. Thanks a lot. We're out.